Hello, historic people. I'm Corky K, and this is Historic Metals. Was there ever a real-life Indiana Jones? As you've probably heard by now yourself, there's been a new installment in the Indiana Jones film series released this summer. It got me thinking about some things, like, was there ever a real-life Indiana Jones? And what happens if you get bit by a king cobra or get cursed in a mummy's tomb anyway? I mean, really, that seems pretty bad. I decided the first question was way less scary than the second question. So today we're diving into the legendary world of archaeology to uncover the truth behind one of the greatest adventurers in cinematic history, Indiana Jones himself. So let's go find out if there was ever a real-life Indy. Back in 1981, when I was just a 7th grader, the world was introduced to the daring, rugged, and charming archaeologist Indiana Jones, portrayed brilliantly by the one and only Harrison Ford. The movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, took the world by storm, and we all fell in love with the thrill of exciting, exotic adventures, ancient mysteries, and hidden treasure. But here's the question that's been on my mind. Was there ever a real-life Indiana Jones? An archaeologist and explorer as fearless and relentless as the ones we adore on the silver screen? Well, my fellow history enthusiasts, I've been on a quest to find the answer. Join me and let's unearth the real-life adventurers who might have inspired this iconic character together. But first, would you be so kind as to subscribe to my channel and leave a comment below letting me know that you did? That way you'll be sure to get more historic videos like this one in your feed, and it would really help my channel to reach more folks as well. And now let's dig deep into history and archaeology and see if we can find a real-life Indiana Jones. Here we go! "1981 was the year that the whole world suddenly became obsessed with archaeology. That was the year that the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first film of the now classic series, was released. An immediate hit, the film gave the world a new hero, the tough and handsome adventurer and academic professor Indiana Jones. Inspired by the square-jawed heroes of the 1930s pulp fiction books and movie serials, the hard-boiled Jones became such a popular hero that people wanted him to be real. Some took this as a sign to become archaeologists, while others began searching history books and historical records in search of Jones's real-life counterpart. The series was created by George Lucas and stars Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. The first 4 films were directed by Steven Spielberg, who worked closely with Lucas during their production. In 1984, a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark called The Temple of Doom was released, and in 1989, a sequel, The Last Crusade. A 4th film followed in 2008 titled The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. A 5th film has just been made and was released a couple of weeks ago, here in the summer of 2023. So, Indy's still going strong. Have you ever wondered how George Lucas came up with the idea for Indiana Jones, though? Was there ever a real-life Indiana Jones? I have definitely given this some thought over the years myself. During my archaeological information journey, I dug up a group of archaeologists whose exploits are just as daring as those of Indiana Jones. So let's find out who they are. I was researching the adventures of early archaeologists who made great discoveries involving historic and valuable treasures, and I kept running into more and more examples of men that might have inspired a character like the fictitious but world-famous movie character named Dr. Indiana Jones, most of whom were either professional or amateur archaeologists of some notoriety in their own time. So who were these potential role models for Indiana Jones? They were definitely a mix of all kinds of intelligent, intellectual, and still rough and rugged individuals who certainly all searched for danger and made extraordinary discoveries in the process. No, wait, I think they searched for extraordinary discoveries and found danger in it. Either way, danger and discoveries are what Indiana Jones movies are all about. So let's meet these historic and extraordinary individuals, shall we? First up is Hiram Bingham. Some believe that the producers of Indiana Jones, or even more likely, the producers of the even earlier adventure movies that themselves in turn inspired the Jones producers, had likely based the swashbuckling hero on a history professor named Hiram Bingham. Bingham, also known as the man who first located the lost city of Machu Picchu, sure looks like the real deal, with his fedora and rugged attire. Photos of Bingham's determined expression as well as his own choice of a fedora and camp jacket style of clothing seem like the type of explorer whom Indiana Jones will be modeled after. But that said, there's many other other historic archaeologist who also bore a resemblance to some of Indy's trademark traits, and dozens have been considered as possible inspirations for the film. So which of these adventurers was the inspiration for Indy? George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, and the other film contributors don't specifically say. However, they do acknowledge a debt to the adventure movies of the 1930s. And of course, even before Indiana Jones was envisioned, these movies were also likely based on a combination of some of the following real-life academic and adventurous men. We mentioned Hiram Bingham already, but here's 10 more real-life adventurers, explorers, and archaeologists who were potential inspirations for the character of Indiana Jones. I give you these in no particular order, but still present it as a list because after all, everybody loves lists, especially archaeologists and explorers. So here we go, starting with number 10. F.A. Mitchell Hedges. Most Indiana Jones fans will agree that Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was a disappointing installment in the movie series. However, the story of the Mayan crystal skulls, whose conspiracy theorists believe supposedly foretell the end of the world, starts with a man worthy of comparison to Indiana Jones. Frederick Albert Mitchell Hedges was an English traveler and writer who decided to seek a life of adventure instead of attending university or any other institution that would give him a reputable name. Beginning at a very early age, Mitchell Hedges began exploring the Canadian wilderness, war-torn Mexico, and the Central American coast in search of the lost city of Atlantis. Mitchell Hedges wrote about his travels, and along with his wife Lillian Dolly and his adopted daughter Anne-Marie LeGillian, Mitchell Hedges became a celebrity during the height of adventure journalism. Mitchell Hedges' greatest find, the crystal skull of doom, is a point of controversy. For his part, Mitchell Hedges claimed that he found the eerie skull in the 1930s. Anna refuted this and claimed that she was the one who had found the skull underneath a Mayan temple in British Honduras in modern-day Belize. Going even further, Anna claimed that a Mayan priest had previously used the skull to kill his enemies while in the hands of non-believers. It brought bad luck. Whatever the true story actually is, Mitchell Hedges believed that the skull was evil, and its finding has become the source of many legends and silly predictions. Number 9 is Frederick Russell Burnham. Called He Who Sees in the Dark, Frederick Russell Burnham was a U.S. scout and Native American tracker who made a name for himself in Africa as a British spy and adventurer. If he truly helped to inspire Indiana Jones, then Indiana would be the second fictional character touched by his larger-than-life legacy. The first was Alan Quatermain, H. Rider Haggard's heroic big-game hunter. On a stranger note, if history had gone in a different direction, Burnham would be better known as one of the first two men who first introduced hippopotamus meat into the Western diet. Have you ever had hippopotamus? Armed with his trusty six-shooter, Lee Metford rifle, and various indigenous weapons, Burnham became one of the most feared and respected scouts in North America and Africa. In the U.S., Burnham fought with the Army in the Southwest during the Apache Wars. In Africa, he participated in both the Matabele Wars, which helped to win what became known as Rhodesia for the British South Africa Company. Burnham also fought in the bloody Second Boer War, where he frequently worked behind the lines doing covert operations such as dynamiting Boer infrastructure. Burnham's exploits in Africa, which include the assassination of Malimo, the Matabele spiritual leader who fomented the rebellion that helped to spark the Second Matabele War, and his leadership in the feared Lovat Scouts, a Highlander regiment in the British Army, helped to make him one of Great Britain's biggest heroes. Outside of war, Burnham made his mark in other arenas as well. Besides partaking in the Klondike Gold Rush, Burnham also found time to help with the modern-day Boy Scouts along with Robert Baden-Powell, whom he met during the Second Matabele War. While in Mexico with celebrated fisherman Charles Frederick Holder, Burnham uncovered a large inscribed stone in the Yaqui River Valley that has since come to be known as the Esperanza Stone. The stone, with its bizarre symbols and unknown origin, remains a favorite topic of discussion among Forteans or the followers of paranormal researcher Charles Fort, who examined the stone as part of his Book of the Damned. Coming in at number 8, we have Giovanni Battista Belzoni. Giovanni Battista Belzoni was literally a giant of his age, standing somewhere around 201 centimeters or 6 foot 7 inches tall. The Italian-born Belzoni first made a name for himself as a circus strongman in England. Belzoni, almost certainly a polymath, was an accomplished hydraulic engineer who built engines for exhibitions. It was this skill which brought Belzoni to the attention of Muhammad Ali Pasha, the ethnically Albanian former commander in the Ottoman army who helped to establish modern Egypt. In 1815, Belzoni journeyed to Egypt in order to show the Egyptian ruler his hydraulic irrigation machines, but the Italian strongman and the engineer wound up becoming one of Egypt's great plunderers, ransacking many ancient tombs and temples. What Belzoni managed to accomplish in Egypt is astounding. In 1816, Belzoni, using his great strength and skills as an engineer, retrieved a 7-ton bust of Ramses II from his mortuary temple at Thebes and sold it to the British Museum, where it still stands today. Next, Belzoni and a team of workers cleared the entrance leading to the great temple at Abu Simbel and entered the site. Belzoni would continue to explore the insides of Egyptian tombs, such as the burial chamber of Seti I, which is still occasionally called Belzoni's tomb, and Belzoni also became the first modern man to set foot inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. For many archaeologists, Belzoni, who helped to popularize ancient Egyptian artifacts in Great Britain before dying of dysentery in West Africa, is more of a grave robber than a scientist or academic. Funnily enough, the same charge has been lobbed at our friend Indiana Jones. Number 7 is Percy Fawcett. Percy Fawcett may have been as mad as he was brilliant. A natural adventurer who usually sported his trademark Stetson hat pushed down above his steely blue eyes and cavalier facial hair, Fawcett began his life as an artillery officer in the British Army. While in uniform, Lieutenant Colonel Fawcett served in Sri Lanka and World War I, and during his time in Morocco, he was knee-deep in espionage for his country. Along the way, he found time to develop a passion for exploring South America, especially then uncharted parts of the Amazon and Bolivia. As Fawcett's stories of escaping hostile natives and nature's deadliest predators made international news, he became such a celebrity that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, used some of Fawcett's tales as material for his 1912 novel, The Lost World. After many treks in the Amazon, Fawcett began to develop a novel idea of his own. Namely, he believed that a lost city, Z, existed in the heart of Brazil's Mato Grosso rainforest. The idea so consumed him that Percy took off in search of the city in 1925. This was to be his final exploration, for the courageous, if not reckless, Fawcett disappeared deep into the Amazonian jungle and has never been seen since. The most common belief is that Fawcett was murdered and cannibalized by a local tribe. However, some uncovered evidence may point to the fact that Fawcett intentionally got lost so that he could go about creating his grand scheme, a secret commune practicing a strange cultist religion dedicated to Theosophy and his own son Jack. Theosophy, by the way, which influenced some of the more bizarre aspects of Nazi ideology, which we often see in Indiana Jones films, is an esoteric philosophy that was incredibly popular among well-heeled individuals during the 1920s. If Fawcett was indeed influenced by Theosophy and the desire to create his own religion, then the story of his disappearance would make for an Indiana Jones movie all on its own. For number 6, we have Robert John Braidwood. Like his mentor James Henry Brest did, Robert John Braidwood was an archaeologist, a professor at the University of Chicago, and an expert on the ancient civilizations of the Middle East. Along with his wife and partner Linda, Dr. Braidwood helped to modernize the field of archaeology beginning in the 1940s. One of his most sensational finds was the village of Jarmo, a settlement at the foothills of the Zagros Mountains that began around 6800 BC. On top of this, while working in Turkey's Amak Valley, then called the Amak Plain, Braidwood became one of the first archaeologists to rigorously use Willard Libby's process of carbon dating in order to ascertain the age of ancient artifacts. Although the very image of scholarly modesty, Braidwood did his part during World War II as the director of a meteorological mapping program for the U.S. Army Air Corps. After graduating from the University of Chicago in 1943 with a PhD, the newly minted Dr. Braidwood was hired by Chicago's Oriental Institute and the Department of Anthropology, where he would remain until his retirement. Throughout his career, Braidwood specialized in particularly ancient and somewhat mysterious sites, such as the Neolithic city of Kayanu in modern-day Turkey, where it is speculated that human sacrifice was practiced. Although not as dashing or larger than life as many of the men who have been labeled the real-life Indiana Jones, Braidwood did oversee numerous archaeological digs in the Middle East during the Cold War years, when the Middle East was a battleground, both real and political, between the United States, the Soviet Union, and their competing allies. Number 5 is Roy Chapman Andrews. Roy Chapman Andrews was a celebrated explorer for the American Museum of Natural History who famously explored the Gobi Desert using a fleet of Dodge cars. While there, Andrews and his team unearthed numerous complete skeletons of previously undocumented small and large dinosaurs, as well as the remains of several insect species and the bones of large mammals. In the 1920s and 30s, Andrews' exploits were celebrated in the world press. After retiring in the 1940s, Chapman became a popular writer of children's books about dinosaurs, which I think is really just the best possible ending to his story. Wouldn't you agree? As with Hiram Bingham, Andrews is a man frequently associated with Indiana Jones. Like Jones, Chapman was a lean yet muscular man who took to the field wearing a slouch hat and sporting a pistol. Andrews wasn't afraid to use his weapon on occasion, and the books he wrote about his own travels in China and elsewhere are littered with shootouts and fight scenes that would not be out of place in the pulp magazines of his day. Andrews said that in his life, the threat of death was almost a constant companion. He once wrote, "In my first 15 years of field work, I can remember just 10 times when I had really narrow escapes from death. 2 were from drowning in typhoons, 1 was when our boat was charged by a wounded whale, once my wife and I were nearly eaten by wild dogs, and once we were in great danger from fanatical Lama priests. 2 were close calls when I fell over cliffs, once was nearly caught by a huge python, and twice I might have been killed by bandits." Like Indy, Andrews was a well-educated and gifted archaeologist who preferred action to just sitting in libraries and studying. The two will also share a preference for revolvers and a hatred for snakes. In regards to the latter, Jones has an irrational fear of snakes, while Andrews gained his loathing after vipers who were fleeing the nighttime cold of the Gobi Desert found their way into his camp. When they realized what was happening, Andrews and his team killed 47 highly venomous snakes in a fashion that Indiana Jones would definitely have approved of. For number 4, we have E. Hoffman Price. Whereas Andrews has been mentioned as a real-life inspiration behind the creation of Indiana Jones on numerous occasions, E. Hoffman Price has not. But oddly enough, Price not only lived a life worthy of Indiana Jones, but he also wrote the type of stories that inspired George Lucas and Steven Spielberg to create the character in the first place. Described by science fiction writer Jack Williamson as a genuine soldier of fortune, Price was a California-born graduate of West Point, a veteran of 3 combat tours, the Pancho Villa expedition, the Philippines, and World War I, and a well-traveled fencer and boxer who happened to be interested in archaeology, Arabic, and what was then called Oriental Studies. At some point, Price settled down into a steady job in New Orleans, but he maintained his adventuresome spirit through his fiction. From the 1920s until his death in 1988, Price composed thousands of short stories that spanned several genres, from action-adventure to strange horror stories that were frequently printed by the seminal pulp magazine Weird Tales. Price has also the distinction of being the only person to ever meet writers Robert E. Howard, the creator of Conan the Barbarian, Clark Ashton Smith, and H.P. Lovecraft face-to-face. In particular, Lovecraft and Price maintained a close friendship until Lovecraft's untimely death in 1937. The pair even collaborated on a short story called Through the Gates of the Silver Key. Some of the characters that Price created, which may have influenced the creation of Indiana Jones, include the Singaporean detective Pawang Ali, Jim Kane, an American guerrilla fighter in the Philippines, and the French swordsman Pierre d'Artois, who often fought evil cult groups like the ones Indy faces in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. For number 3, we have John Pendlebury. Although an archaeologist by trade and education, John Pendlebury was more of a swashbuckler than anything else. With his distinctive look, which included a glass eye that he received after an early childhood accident, Pendlebury typified the daring British gentleman adventurer of the early 20th century. Even before entering Pembroke College, Cambridge, Pendlebury was a dedicated classic scholar with an interest in Egyptology. Not long after graduating, Pendlebury became involved in excavations at Akhenaten's capital of Amarna in Egypt and at Knossos in Crete, which was being overseen at the time by famous British archaeologist Sir Arthur Evan. By age 25, Pendlebury was already the curator at Knossos and the director of excavations at Tel El Amarna. Though ancient Egypt was his first love, Pendlebury made his working home in Crete, where he studied Minoan culture and its ties to the greater Mediterranean world. For years, Pendlebury worked as something of a freelance archaeologist on the island and grew to know every inch of Crete, from the mountains mountains to the coastline. This knowledge would serve him well during World War II, when as a commissioned officer in the British Intelligence Corps, Pendlebury helped to lead local resistance against the German invasion in 1941. Based in the city of Heraklion, Pendlebury and Cretan guerrillas bravely fought against German paratroopers until Pendlebury was wounded by Luftwaffe machine guns. Pendlebury was captured by the Germans, had his wounds dressed, and was executed and buried outside the Kinea Gate. Like the later Indiana Jones, Pendlebury became a hero of the anti-Nazi resistance to both local Cretans and Allied intelligence services. Number 2, Sylvanus Morley. Even though he looked like the typical egghead professor, Sylvanus Morley, an American archaeologist for the School of American Archaeology, was capable of brave feats, especially as a spy in Central America for the Office of Naval Intelligence during World War I. Morley, who was an expert on the Native American cultures of the Southwest, first began exploring Mexico in the early 20th century. His interest was the Mayan civilization, and in 1912, he began excavating the city of Chichen Itza. Here, Morley found his bliss, and in 1913, his plan to start fully excavating the ancient city was approved by the Carnegie Institution of Washington. World War I interrupted Morley's plans, however, but the patriotic archaeologist decided to use his vast knowledge of Central America and his cover of working archaeologist in order to spy on possible German naval activity south of the American border. Morley proved to be as good of a spy as he was an archaeologist, and even though he never managed to find any evidence that the Germans were hiding U-boat pins along the Central American coastline, he did manage to chart thousands of miles of terrain and even continued to file intelligence reports until 1922. Even before his death in 1948, Morley was regarded as one of the world's finest Mesoamerican archaeologists. First and foremost, last on our list and coming in at number 1, James Henry Breasted. James Henry Breasted remains a titan of archaeology, an Egyptologist who spent most of his career at the University of Chicago, which also has a connection with the character of Indiana Jones. Breasted is noted for founding the University of Chicago's Oriental Institute, as well as coining the term Fertile Crescent as a way to describe the verdant splendor of the ancient Middle East. As the director of the University of Chicago's Haskell Oriental Museum, Breasted contributed numerous artifacts from all over the Near East to the museum's impressive collection. Breasted's most famous excavation occurred in Egypt from 1922 to 23. There he aided Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon in their efforts to unlock all the secrets of Tutankhamun's tomb. This action places Breasted smack dab in the middle of one of archaeologists' greatest urban legends, the Curse of Tutankhamun. Breasted's role in helping to unearth King Tut's body not only provided fodder for the sensationalist press, which in turn helped to create films such as 1932's The Mummy, but also started a craze for all things ancient Egypt in Europe and North America. It's safe to say that Breasted played a role in popularizing the idea of the glamorous archaeologist, and even though he lacked the heedless enthusiasm that so many of us associate with Indiana Jones, he did contribute greatly to the field and even to Sigmund Freud's understanding of religion. But you know what's truly fascinating? The Indiana Jones movies had a significant impact on the field of archaeology itself. A National Geographic exhibit showcased how the films inspired a new generation of explorers and scientists and provides evidence that Indiana Jones contributed to an increased interest in the profession of archaeology. It seems proven then that the Indiana Jones film series in turn excited a new generation of would-be explorers and scientists. One of the series' actors wrote, "I must have met at least 150 or 160 full professors, lecturers, practicing archaeologists who've come up to me to say that their first interest in archaeology began when they first saw the Raiders of the Lost Ark films." From real-life professors to practicing archaeologists, many were driven to pursue their passion after watching Indy's escapades on the big screen. So have you seen the Indiana Jones movies? Have you seen or are you going to see the brand new one soon? Do you think these movies influenced your interest in history or in finding great treasures? Did you know about all these real-life rugged adventurers and explorers and discoverers we discussed today? These trailblazing archaeologists that, just like Indiana Jones, faced danger, unraveled mysteries, and left an indelible mark on history? That, my truly historic friends, was how they became some truly historic people. Let me know down in the comments below if you want to go dig up old stuff and search for treasures. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to be alerted when I go live on the channel with hangouts, sales, auctions, and other events. That way you won't miss a Historic Metals episode in the future. Can't wait to see you there. Well, my fellow adventurers, that's all for today's Historic Metals. Remember, the spirit of Indiana Jones lives on in the hearts of daring explorers around the world. I hope you have enjoyed the information I presented. If you have any questions or any comments about the channel or this video, please post them down below in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you. And finally, last but certainly not least, thank you for watching this video. On a platform with so many videos to choose from, I'm truly grateful that you choose to watch mine. Until we meet again, keep seeking knowledge, keep uncovering history's hidden gems, and most importantly, keep being historic. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Historic Metals. I'm Corky K, this has been Historic Metals, and you are historic.